Many people who claim to be Christian were outraged by the events on October 7th, and rightfully so. But you know what's really concerning? Many of these people are not aware of some major revelations that have come out about October 7th itself and the modern state of Israel. How do I know this? Because there are still way too many people online who claim to be Christian, spreading information that has been debunked in some cases almost 2 years ago. So they have definitely not been keeping up with the 411. So I'm going to do you a favor and get you up to date on all the information about October 7th and what's come to light since. I'll do my best to mainly share Israeli sourced videos and screenshots to validate the things that I'm going to tell you today. The whole point of this video is to just get people who claim to be Christian up to date and informed, because spreading false information online isn't really the best look. Hi, I'm Vanessa. Welcome to Wholeheartedness. As I said, many Christians were outraged by the events that took place on October 7th, which I think is totally fine. But the problem is that their outrage starts and ends with Hamas. Yet the entity that they staunchly support doesn't have clean hands either. The details I'm going to share are really just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to know all of the atrocities that have happened post October 7th, I encourage you to look into that for yourself. Or you could watch this video right here. On October 7th, Israel enacted the Hannibal Directive. This is a military directive that is supposed to be exclusive to military members, but on October 7th, it was expanded and used to authorize the murder of Israeli citizens. Here's a short clip of the former Israeli Minister of Defense who was active in that role on October 7th.
הנוהל שאומר לירות על מנת להרוג כאשר יש רכב עם חטוף ישראלי.
אני רוצה שתבינו שהיכולת של שר ביטחון לתת הוראות אופרטיביות בלוח זמנים שהכל קורה היא דבר מאוד מוגבל.
ניתנה הוראה לנוהל חניבל?
אני חושב שבאופן טקטי במקומות שונים ניתנה, במקומות אחרים לא ניתנה, וזו בעיה.
As you can see, he confirms that the Hannibal Directive was enacted in certain areas. And it's so concerning because on October 7th, within Israel itself, 20 Apache helicopters used all of their ammunitions and had to reload. According to Israeli Air Force pilots, these helicopters deployed hundreds of 30mm cannon mortars and Hellfire missiles. Here's a testimony of an Israeli woman given on a radio station about what she experienced that day.
עם 40 מחבלים ששומרים עלינו.
הם מתעללים בכם או שהם...
הם לא מתעללים בנו, הם מתנהגים עלינו בצורה מאוד אנושית, זה אומר שהם שומרים עלינו. כן, מה זה אומר אנושית? שומרים עלינו, הם נותנים לנו לשתות פה ושם, שהם רואים שאנחנו בלחץ, הם מרגיעים אותנו. הייתה תחושה מאוד מאוד מפחידה, אבל אף אחד לא התנהג אלינו באלימות. למזלי, לא קרה לי את מה שאני שומעת בתנו. אנחנו אלה שהתקשרנו במשטרה יחד עם החוטפים, כי החוטפים רצו שהמשטרה תגיע, כי המטרה שלהם הייתה לחטוף אותנו לעזה, לא לרצוח אותנו. ואחרי שעתיים שאנחנו נמצאים שם עם החוטפים, מגיעה המשטרה, מתנהל קרב ירי שהמשטרה שלנו מתחילה אותו, קרב ירי מאוד מאוד קשה מבחינת כמות התחמושת שעברה שם. על הדשא של בגינה של האנשים מהקיבוץ, שיש 5 בני ערובה ששוכבים או 6 על האדמה בחוץ, ממש כצאן לטבח מול הירי של הימ"מ שלנו והמחבלים.
הטרוריסטים ירו בהם?
לא. הם נהרגו מהחילופי ירי, תבין שהיה חילופי ירי מאוד מאוד קשים.
זאת אומרת, יכול להיות שזה כוחותינו ירו בהם? כשניסו לפסל את החוטפים, את החמאס.
הם חיסלו את כולם, כולל הבני ערובה.
In addition, tank captor Bar Zanshin told Israel's Channel 13 news station, "I decided killing our soldiers was the right decision, that it's better to stop the kidnapping so they won't be taken." On and after October 7th, modern Israel was showcasing images of incinerated cars, which led people to believe that Hamas had done that. But what they failed to mention is that those cars were incinerated by their own military. Ronen Bergman is an Israeli citizen, and he did an investigation that he released in an Israeli newspaper. In his report about the Hannibal Directive, he said that he found at least 70 vehicles were destroyed by Israeli aircraft and Israeli tanks, and the purpose was to prevent them from driving to Gaza, which is believed to have also held Israeli civilians. Ronen said it's not clear at this point how many abductees were killed due to the activation of this Hannibal order on October 7th. Modern Israel was also showcasing to the world images of houses that had been destroyed on October 7th. But once again, Modern Israel had failed to mention that it was Modern Israel's military that had caused the damages to those homes.
Well, why is the destruction then? I'm sorry. Why is the destruction?
This destruction
it looks like more like
a cause of our tanks attack.
Fired on them.
Yeah, because they were blocked in these houses, and we needed to conquer back the whole settlement, and it couldn't be happened without the tanks.
Okay.
So how many were here, and then how many survived? How many did you?
No one survived from this house. From other buildings, we rescued many, but from this house, 19 people died. Among them, 8 children.
Israeli citizens who shared their testimonies about October 7th, insisting that the Israeli military was firing upon them while they were in homes. And some admitted that it was the Israeli military that killed hostages who were with them. But in the end, Modern Israel claims that they didn't kill anyone and that they did nothing wrong that day. Though this is a conclusion that contradicts multiple Israeli citizens' own testimonies. Now we're going to talk about a few things that came to light that happened before October 7th. A year before October 7th even occurred, Modern Israel had detailed plans for October 7th. The information Modern Israel had about the plans for October 7th were so detailed, down to the number of hostages Hamas planned to take. So despite having these detailed plans a year in advance, did the modern state of Israel do anything at all to stop October 7th from happening? No. Modern Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is on trial right now for corruption. He's accused of propping up Hamas for years prior to October 7th. This dates as far back as the early 2010s. Netanyahu allowed literal suitcases full of cash to be funneled through Qatar directly to Hamas. Why would Netanyahu do this? Because he didn't want peace, nor did he want a Palestinian state. If Hamas remained in power, he would have a legitimate excuse to say that he couldn't negotiate with the leaders of Gaza because they're terrorists. So keeping Hamas in power was something that Netanyahu and his far-right ministers ensured remained true. In 2019, Netanyahu is quoted saying in a Likud meeting that anyone who opposes a Palestinian state should support the funds for Hamas. And while Netanyahu denies he ever said this, he's actually on record saying this very same thing in 2012 in an interview with the journalist Dan Margalit. And his current finance minister, Smotrich, also said the same thing in a 2015 interview. And it wasn't just Netanyahu. Even during his pause in power, the other prime minister, while he didn't allow literal suitcases to be funneled through Qatar to Hamas, he didn't stop cash from flowing to Hamas. So how did Hamas become capable of doing what they did on October 7th? Well, with the support and blessing of Benjamin Netanyahu and the government of Modern Israel. Finally, let's go over the claims that were made about what happened on October 7th. I hope you read this little disclaimer right here. I think it's important to clarify because so many people want to accuse people of things. No matter what your perspective is on this issue, this is what should be guiding your perspective. They lied about beheaded babies. There were not 40 beheaded babies. There was not a single beheaded baby found from October 7th. On October 7th, 14 precious children under the age of 10 lost their life that day. Of those 14 children, only one was 1 year old and one was not even born yet. The 1-year-old was sadly and tragically shot through the door. So the person who shot this baby didn't know who they were shooting. And the unborn child died when its mother died after being killed. But I need us to understand that the data coming from Israel's own registry from the deaths that day does not support the idea of there being any beheaded babies, not a single one of them, and especially, for sure, not 40. There were no children who were tied up together and burned alive. This is a lie that was created by the modern state of Israel and a group within Israel called Zaka. I'll share a video right now, which is a little bit longer, of an interview done with the head of Zaka, and you will see for yourself. He's a questionable character, and he is pretty much the source of almost all of the lies from October 7th.
It was an interview you did with Sky Television from Britain. 2 piles, we found them in Bury. 2 piles of 10 children each were tied back to back and burned to death. Now, again, I mean, if we look at the death figures at Bury, there are only 10 children that died at Bury.
Well, not children, it's 18-year-old. So we all together, when you look at them and they're burned, you don't know exactly the ages. So you're talking about 18-year-old, 20 years old, and you just don't look on the spot identification to see the ages or something like that.
It is not the only questionable story that Yossi Landau tells about Kibbutz Be'eri.
We go further. Then we see a woman. She was lying on the floor. She was a pregnant woman.
Kibbutz Be'eri has denied this account.
The story of the pregnant woman reported by Zaka is not relevant to Be'eri.
Yossi Landau insists he witnessed this scene at Be'eri.
If you want to see the picture, I have the picture of it.
Are you able to share the photographic evidence with us?
To show you, yes. Where's my phone? Oh, I'm sorry. I will not put it in front of the camera.
No, that's fine. I'll come and look.
This is the knife they used.
Shot and killed, but...
Over here was the woman.
But that's the imagery after the bodies had been cleared away. Oh.
Yes. This is the baby. This is it.
I'm sorry to be graphic here, but I can't see a baby here.
You can't see the baby but this is the picture of the mother. Okay. For sure, you know, we didn't think when we were over there, we didn't think to camera everything. We didn't have that. This wasn't in our...
The photo shows an unidentifiable piece of charred flesh. The list of the dead contains no victim that fits Yossi Landau's description. On October 7th, 2 babies die. One is killed when a bullet is fired through a door. The other dies following an emergency cesarean after the mother is shot. Neither is burned or beheaded.
You being someone who, with your own hands, with your own eyes, with your nose, you smelled this, what would you say to that person who is downplaying what took place here?
I wouldn't say anything. I would ask, please give me, he should be together with the Hamas terrorist and he should be killed because he's a part of it. But
there was no pregnant woman who was murdered with her stomach cut open and her unborn baby killed. That is not something that happened on October 7th, but it did happen in 1948 at the creation of the modern state of Israel. The government of Israel and the head of Zaka, they stole that story from the horrors of the Deir Yassin massacre that happened in 1948. Jewish terrorist groups massacred a town. They raped women and teenage girls. They burned men alive. They bombed homes that they knew entire families were in. And yes, they killed a pregnant woman. They cut open her stomach, and they killed her unborn baby.
Huge part of the story of October the 7th was based on explaining away the results of the implementation of the Hannibal Directive. Hamas surely murdered people, mostly with gunshots, rifle shots, and grenades, handheld grenades, things like this. Well, who blew up this whole house full of people?
Yeah.
An Israeli tank did.
Right.
Who blew up all these cars? Israeli helicopters. But they had to put all that on Hamas. So they showed all this destruction. They said, oh, they tied up this family and then set them all on fire, and they cut off the heads of all these babies, and they elaborated all of this stuff. They claimed that there were 20 babies had their heads cut off, and then they were hung from a clothesline. Mm-hmm. They said that a woman, and this actually happened in the Deir Yassin massacre in 1948, the Israelis did this to Palestinians, cut the woman's stomach open and killed her baby. That is a real story from what the Israelis did to the Palestinians. They lied and said that the Palestinians did that to them. Another story, true, from the Nakba. They took a man's baby and threw him in an oven. And they used that story that the Israelis had done to the poor Palestinians and pretended that the Palestinians had done that to them. So in other words, instead of just saying, oh my God, Candace, it was horrible. All these people were killed. Civilians were shot in their own homes, in their cars on the road. Oh no, No, instead it was, they tied children up and set them on fire. They cut the heads off of babies. They blew up these houses. They blew up all these people in their cars and all this stuff.
And you're correct. My ex is filled with all of these videos of what they are now doing to Palestinian children, babies that are actually beheaded, babies that are actually burned, and America just turns the cheek.
Yeah, they call it fake. Yeah. In my mentions, every day, they go, that's fake. They're a bunch of actors. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Gazan people right now are acting like they just got bombed.
They don't have water, they can't eat, they're starving, but everyone's just conspiring to pretend that this is happening. And like everyone from the ICC to the UN to everybody who is saying that this is actually happening. The journalists that have risked their lives to get these stories out, and our Western media won't cover it.
And Candace, it is like the Waco massacre every day. Imagine Bill Clinton burning Waco and then doing it again and again and again and again for a year
and they're
and
just
3
moving
months.
settlers in instantly.
Yeah.
This was totally unplanned, guys, but we do have a group of settlers who are going to move in and take this land immediately.
Please, when you see people online advocating for what's happening to Gaza to end, stop replying with release the hostages. I'm not telling you to stop advocating for the hostages to be released, because we should ask for that. But to say it in response to people asking for what's happening to Gaza to stop is really weird, because one, it gives off the impression that you approve of collective punishment, because the community in the Gaza Strip is 99.1% civilian. So they are less than 1% away from being a 100% civilian population. And never forget that their population is 50% children. But to respond to people's pleas for the crimes against Gaza to end with release the hostages is to say that you're okay with Israel mass murdering civilians so long as the hostages who the civilians don't have are in Gaza. Can you tell me what child has the power to release the hostages? And even what civilian adult in the Gaza Strip has the power to release the hostages? Just imagine our government taking people hostage from another country, and that country threatening all of us to bomb us to oblivion if we don't release the hostages. Yet the hostages are being held by our government in places in which we don't have access to. The absolute insanity of that idea. This is exactly the line of logic that you're using when you respond to people who are pleading for the genocide in Gaza to end with release the hostages. Your response has nothing to do with what they're asking for, because the people they're pleading for do not have power to do what you're responding with. So it's totally irrelevant, it's illogical, it's insensitive, and it's evil and just idiotic. And two, saying release the hostages in response to people's pleas is really just showing that you're uninformed. Because on October 9th of 2023, Hamas offered to release all of them. Even to Israeli hostage families, they believe that it's the government of modern Israel that's sabotaging the ability to get the hostages back. And they've been saying this for well over a year. And according to Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy to the Middle East, he also believes that it's the state of Israel that's prolonging the war and preventing the hostages from coming home, which so far the most hostages have been released through ceasefires and diplomatic means. And to add insult to injury, Netanyahu has explicitly stated that even if the hostages are released, that the war will not end. They have no intention of stopping bombing the Gaza Strip because they want to occupy it. And finally, a memo was leaked from modern Israel's military. This memo went over their aims for their assault on Gaza Strip, what they wanted to achieve. And getting the hostages, it was at the very bottom of the list. So no, saying release the hostages to people pleading online for the modern state of Israel to stop mass murdering innocent people is a totally depraved and morally bankrupt response. And it really just makes you look, At the end of the day, when we choose to put our support behind someone, we should do so in an informed and biblical way. Blindly supporting someone, unconditionally supporting someone, it's unbiblical. So if you plan to give blind allegiance and unconditional support to the modern state of Israel, perhaps consider not publicly confessing that you're a Christian, because before the world, you're just making Jesus look really bad. But if you're interested in hearing what I have to say that's been getting me in trouble these last many months, go ahead and listen to this video right here. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Share this video with anyone who you think might want to hear it or need to hear it. I will see you next time.